In the heart of a peaceful village, there lived a girl named Nneka. She had grown up with her father, Ozoamena, ever since her mother passed away when she was very young. The two of them had always been close, living a simple life near the river that provided everything they needed. The river gave them fish to eat and water to grow their crops. It was the lifeblood of the village, and Neca's family had always honored it. One day, everything changed when Ozoamena remarried. His new wife, Nwadi, came from a neighboring village. Nwadi was the most beautiful woman Neca had ever seen. Her skin was smooth and shone like polished stone, and her long hair always seemed wet, as if she had just stepped out of the river. The whole village was amazed by her beauty. Ozoamena was happy to have her as his wife, and for a short time Neca tried to welcome Nwadi. But soon strange things began to happen. The river, which had always been full of fish, started to dry up. Fishermen returned from the river with empty nets, unable to catch anything. Then the crops in the village began to wither and die, as if the land itself had lost its strength. Most frightening of all, Ozoamena, Neca's strong and healthy father, became very sick. He was always tired and he stayed in bed most days, growing weaker and weaker. The village's fortune seemed to change for the worse after Nwadi arrived. At first, Neca thought these were just unfortunate events, but the more she watched Nwadi, the more uneasy she felt. Nwadi often disappeared at night, leaving the house quietly when she thought everyone was asleep. Neca also noticed that Nwadi would sometimes hum a strange song, one that sent chills down Neca's spine. It was a haunting melody, unlike anything Neca had heard in the village. Something about it felt wrong, but Nwadi always stopped humming when she noticed Neca listening. Neca's worry grew as her father's condition worsened. Ozoamena was a shadow of the man he used to be, and the village was in trouble. People began whispering about a curse. It was said that the river goddess had turned her back on them, but Neca wasn't sure if that was the reason. She couldn't shake the feeling that her stepmother was connected to all the bad things happening. One night, Neca decided to find out the truth. She stayed awake, waiting until Nwadi left the house. As the moon hung high in the sky, Nwadi quietly slipped out, just as she had done many nights before. This time, Neca followed her, careful to stay hidden. She crept through the trees, her heart pounding, until she reached the riverbank. There, under the light of the full moon, Neca saw something that made her blood run cold. Nwadi stood at the edge of the river, and as Neca watched, her stepmother's legs began to shimmer and change. Her skin glowed under the moonlight, and her legs merged into a long, shining fishtail. Nwadi wasn't human. She was a mami wata, a mermaid, a dangerous water spirit who had come to destroy their family and their village. Neca gasped and covered her mouth, too terrified to move. Nwadi didn't see her. She was too busy speaking in a strange language to the river. Neca turned and ran back to the house, her heart racing. She now knew the truth, but what could she do? The next morning, Neca went to see the oldest man in the village, Nnamdi, who was a respected dibia, a healer who knew the ways of the spirits. She told him everything she had seen. Nnamdi listened carefully, his face serious. "This is no ordinary woman," he said slowly. "Nwadi is a mami wata, a water spirit. These spirits are known to bring misfortune to those they wish to harm. She has come to feed off the pain and suffering of your family. Your father's sickness, the dying crops, and the empty river. It is all her doing. She will destroy everything unless she is stopped." "But how can we stop her?" Neca asked, her voice trembling. She couldn't believe that this beautiful woman who had married her father was really a monster. "There is only one way," Nnamdi said. "Years ago, there was a man named Obieze who survived an encounter with a mami wata. His family was destroyed, but he escaped with his life. He knows how to break the curse." You must find him and ask him what to do." Neca left the village that very day, determined to save her father and the village. She traveled through forests and villages, asking everyone she met about OBAs. Finally, after many days of searching, she found him. He was an old man living in a small hut on the edge of a quiet village. His body was covered in scars, and his eyes were filled with sorrow. When Neca explained her situation, Obiezer nodded sadly. "I have seen the destruction these mermaids can cause," he said. "My family was taken by a Mami Wata many years ago. I barely escaped with my life." "Please," Neca begged, "tell me how I can stop her. My father is dying and my village is suffering." Obiez sighed and then told her the secret. "The mermaid's power comes from the river," he explained. "But there is a way to trap her. There is a hidden spring deep in the forest. The water from this spring is sacred, blessed by our ancestors. It has the power to bind spirits to their true form. If you can pour this water on her while she is in her mermaid form, it will trap her and stop her from harming anyone else." With new hope, Neca thanked Obiez and set off to find the sacred spring. The journey through the forest was long and difficult. The trees were thick and the path was unclear, but Neca did not give up. She knew she had to save her father. After hours of searching, she finally found the spring. The water glowed softly in the moonlight, and Neca could feel its power. She filled a clay pot with the sacred water and hurried back to her village. That night, Neca waited until Nwadi left the house as usual. She followed her to the river, carrying the sacred water. When she reached the riverbank, she saw Nwadi again transform into her true form, her long fishtail shimmering under the moonlight. Neca's heart raced, but she knew this was her only chance. With shaking hands, Neca stepped forward and threw the sacred water at Nwadi. The water glowed brightly, wrapping around the mermaid like chains. Nwadi screamed, her body thrashing as she tried to break free. "You think you can stop me?" she hissed, her voice filled with rage. "I have lived for centuries. No human can defeat me." But the sacred water was too strong. Nwadi's body began to dissolve into the river, her screams echoing in the night. As she disappeared into the water, she cursed Neca. "I will return," she cried. "The river will never forget this." When the sun rose the next morning, the village was peaceful once again. Ozoemena's health slowly returned, and the river, once empty, was full of fish. The crops began to grow again, and life in the village returned to normal. Neca had saved her father and her people, but she knew that the river would always carry the memory of the mermaid's curse. Though the danger had passed, Neca often found herself by the river, watching the water. She knew that the spirits of the river were powerful, and even though Nwadi was gone, the river never truly forgets.